Welcome to the Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor, and I'm also a family business advisor. In this show, we'll be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family business, this podcast is for you. So I'm happy to welcome Angie Jones to our podcast today. Angie is a director at the University of Toledo's Family Business Center. Welcome, Angie.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here today.
Well, I'm glad you could join us. And, we've spoken a few times, but I really
Mhm.
want to understand, what is a family business center?
So, a family business center serves as a critical resource for family owned businesses by providing education tools, networking opportunities, advisory support. It's a place that supports the unique challenges that come along
Mhm.
with owning your own business, like succession, governance,
Right.
conflict resolution, working with spouses. So, what the Family Business Center does is it connects family businesses with experts and peers, allowing them resources to navigate the complexities of the
Hmm.
business while preserving their family values. So, almost like think of it like a toolbox that
Hmm.
contains specialized tools for specific tasks or needs. Some of the family business centers will provide consulting, some provide networking opportunities, some content, peer learning, whatever the family and the business needs to be successful.
And so how long has the Toledo Family Business Center been around?
We celebrated 32 years last April. So we're coming up
Wow.
on 33 years. Yes. And interestingly, we were started, or the idea came about by the business community. They came to the University of Toledo at the time and said,
Oh.
in Toledo, at that time, 32 plus years ago, the Fortune 500s were leaving. Scheller Globe had
Mhm.
just closed down, Champion Spark Plugs had just closed down, and it was really family business that was going to be the backbone of our regional economy. And there
Right.
was nothing in the area that focused on the unique dynamics that come along with owning your own business. So you don't
Mhm.
go to a chamber meeting and say, hey, I'm thinking about selling my company. I got an offer, but my kids think they're going to get it, but I don't know. It's a good deal. I
Yeah.
might take it. What do you do? Right? You needed kind of that safe space with peers to have those types of conversations. At the community, the business leaders brought it to our president, said, great idea. I love the synergies that it would create between the College of Business, faculty,
Mhm.
students, and the family business community.
So it was created through the university, and because that I find fascinating, right? Because the business community actually went to the university and said,
Mhm.
"Hey, can you help us?" And
Yeah.
so, how has that sort of grown over these 32 years?
Yeah. So we decided early on, we had a great advisory board, and we decided that, yeah, I say we, I was not here 32 years ago. They decided that they
The
were
sad
going
part
to.
is, I could have said that I have was there.
Yes, yes. They decided that they were going to be a member-driven organization. So the center was going to exist for the business community. We would have sponsors, we would have the resources and the expertise at the university, but we were going to exist for the membership. And that's how we've evolved as a center. We've been very much outreach focused. We are a member based organization. So the company joins the center. We have the expertise here within the faculty, but our center exists for our membership. So it's not necessarily our sponsors saying, hey, this is what I want to tell the family business communities. Here's the programs that I want to get out in front of the different members in the community. It's our members saying, this is what's keeping us up at night. These are the challenges that we're having. This is what we need help with. And because of that, and because we've been focused on our membership, we've been able to grow really organically. We're about 240 member companies that are a part of the center. They range inside from $1 billion, very international company, all the way down to a mom and pop paving control or paving company where maybe 6 out of the 10 employees are family members, and
Right.
everything in between, manufacturing, service, retail. But the affinity, what brings everyone together, is the family business issues, right? It doesn't matter
Right.
what you
It's the
do, what you
same.
make.
Yeah.
Yep. They're all working with
Regardless.
spouses. They all
Absolutely. And
have
kids.
children coming into the business.
So then to be a member, you don't have to be an alum of University of Toledo. Is there a like what is the radius of your family members? Is it can you be a member if you live in the state of Ohio, or how does that work for your members?
Absolutely. Really, any family business can be a member, especially in the age of virtual communication, right? So we can get content out to anyone. There are, I would say, maybe 50 other family business centers across the country. Many of them are university based, some are not. And so we're respectful of those boundaries. Certainly in the state of Ohio, we have four alone. So I wouldn't, we would go down south maybe about an hour and a half from
Mhm.
Ohio or from Toledo. But then once you get past that, if we had a company reach out, I would say, why don't you try the Conway Center in Columbus? That might be a better fit
Right.
location wise for you.
Now, I know the importance of family business centers and help, but how do you work with the other centers like to collaborate as because family businesses, regardless of your geography, still have the same issues, right?
Mhm.
And so you're focused in your area, but do you work with other centers to provide content across the board? Do you come together at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, there's maybe 50 other centers across the country and in Canada, right? And each family business center is unique. So some of them focus on outreach, directly engaging with businesses, while others might be more academic and research focused. Again, I said our center began more outreach focused, but we are strategically moving into a holistic model to incorporate that research and teaching, which leverages what we do best as a university and allows
Mhm.
us to do more by connecting the local business community with students and faculty. So I would say most of the centers are typically location based, again, meaning you would join the one that's nearest to you,
Right.
but we do work together in a network. So we co-host webinars together, we share resources, we connect members to each other. So
Hmm.
I might have a company in Toledo that wants to talk to another peer company, a family business center, but outside of this area, right? So they
Right.
might have a challenge and everyone here is a little bit too close, right? I'd like to talk with someone in Chicago. So I could reach out to one of the three centers there and say, "Hey, do you have a company that I can connect this member? This is the challenges that they're having. They'd like to talk to like a been there, done that. Do you have a member that I can connect them to over there?" We have quarterly Zoom meetings. We do a annual conference every year, and this past year Toledo was fortunate to host it. It was so much fun. I think we had people from all over the country, and I say we're international because Canada was represented by the
Oh,
Alberta
good.
Family Business Institute. So Matt
Yeah.
Knight was there. It would be Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, Wake Forest, and we had all over the country. I
Hmm.
would say maybe 26 different family business centers represented. And
Wow.
the synergy and the collaboration when we get
Hmm.
together, there's always great conversation, great learning. Because as you said, a lot of the family businesses have the same challenges. Doesn't matter
Right.
where you are, what you do, what you make, you have the same challenges.
So, how do you get that knowledge out there to other family businesses? Because one of the challenges I think is, when we know about a group or an association, we're all over it. But how did how do you find out about that? How do you do the, marketing research or how do people come in? Like, how do they find you really?
Mhm. So for us, a lot of it's word of mouth. So oftentimes we get a member because I'll get a phone call and say, "Hey, my friend Dave says I need to be in an affinity group. I guess I have to join the center because I need to get into your affinity group, which is our peer group program." Or what we try to avoid, we try to get to them early, right? Because I'm sure you've heard, and I've heard on your podcast, they talk about you want to get to the point where you're working on your business and not in your business, right? So we
Yes.
try to get to them early because what I don't want to get, which I do, is a phone call saying, "Hey, my husband and son aren't talking to each other. I don't know what to do. I'm so distraught. Can you please help?" Right? So
Hmm.
we want to get them to join before that so we can begin helping them have those conversations. I think that the two things that we do best as a center is we help families start conversations they don't know they should be having, right? Because
Right.
oftentimes they're so focused on the day-to-day operations and growth and they overlook the critical family related discussions. So we help
Absolutely.
initiate those conversations. And then we help facilitate conversations that they know they should have, but they don't know how to have,
Oh, I
right?
should be a family business
Yes.
center. A
Yes.
family business center of one. So I think that's fascinating because, of course, that's what BlueRoots does, right? We are
Mhm.
focused on trying to keep family businesses in the family. And if that's not the case, then to help them figure out a transition plan, right? Because I think you're right, the conversations don't happen.
Mhm.
They know they should, but they just don't happen. So we become that conduit to try to get those conversations going in a safe space. Now, you say you have quarterly meetings, but how do you come up with the topics? And you say, it's really generated by what your family businesses want. How do you find out what's happening? And then do you share that with the other family centers to say, are you dealing with this? So instead of reinventing the wheel out of the 50 other
Mhm.
locations, do you say, look, at this is the big topic, or this is the questions that we're getting consistently right now?
Yes. So our quarterly meetings, our quarterly Zoom calls is what we have with the other family business centers across the
Oh,
country.
okay. That's with the other
Yes.
family business centers. Got it. Yeah.
Yes. And we, on those calls, we are constantly, here's some programming that I'm doing. Here's some topics that some of my members are struggling with.
Hmm.
There's a topic right now that you might have done some research on is raising children in a family business,
Hmm.
right? So there's some different privileges and entitlement, and you don't want your kids to maybe work as hard as you did. And, when do you start talking to them about the family business? When do
Hmm.
you start allowing them to be a part of it? Do you require them to work outside of the family business before they come into the family business? And so this is a topic I'm going to throw out to the group and say, hey, I want to do some programming on this. I want to do some research on this. Who else has an interest? Who else has
Mm,
faculty
right.
that you work with that has an interest? And let's get together and come up with something. Oh, I was going to say, as far as like what we do programming wise in the center with our members, we do, there's so many different ways to communicate with people. We do some webinars, we do some in-person sessions, we do some large group that has a networking component, a social evening event. We'll do small groups, we'll do peer groups. I mean, there's really, we'll try anything. We just want to reach the people. And
Right.
however we need to do that, we'll give it a shot.
So your affinity peer groups, are
Mhm.
they a certain number of people per group? Is it industry? How does that work? How does that work versus the everybody's included in the webinar or social event or whatever you're having? What do they do that's a little bit different?
Yeah, so we are big believers in that peer-to-peer learning, right? So our peer group program, other centers might call them forums, or there's a Vistage group. We call them our affinity group program. It's anywhere from 5 to maybe 10 people in a group, but it's the same people. They meet monthly. The two things that we stress with these groups are commitment to not only attending and being part of the group, but commitment to being a good group member. That means maybe just listening if that's what's needed, or commitment to sharing, commitment to providing advice, or holding your other group members accountable if that's what's needed, and confidentiality. And we say with our affinity groups, it's Vegas rules, right? So what you talk about in that room stays in that room. That extends to us. Through at the center, they are self-moderated. That
Oh,
extends. We
so
say the
nobody
pillow
is from
talk.
the group is there?
Nope, no one from our centers there. So what we do is we provide them with, we get the group started, and sometimes on paper you might look at a group and say, well, this doesn't look like these people go together, but they go together. We're very meticulous, and we have a process for how we start a group. It's not, oh, I have 10 people, let's start a group.
Right.
Everyone there is for a specific reason. We would never put competitors in a group together. If there is any type of conflict, and the conflict can be like, oh, this person is my son's softball coach or baseball
Oh,
coach,
yeah.
and I just don't
Yeah.
feel comfortable speaking freely in front of them.
Hmm.
So we have a pretty in-depth vetting process, and then we have an onboarding process. We have a way to get them started, and then we give them best practices. But then once they get going, they kind of take on their own personality. And
Hmm.
each one, we have about 22 different affinity groups, and each one's a little bit different.
Hmm.
But if it works for them and they're getting value out of it, then it works for us. And we'll provide support. We'll help them if they need, find a location to meet. We'll help them with reminders if they need. Some need nothing, some need that. And if they need a resource, sometimes they might be like, our group is struggling with employee handbooks. One of our members had an issue and their lawyer said, well, if this were in your handbook, you wouldn't be in the situation. And they're like, well, I
Right.
don't have a handbook. Do you have a handbook? So they'll come to us and say, hey, do you have an expert that can come talk to us about employee handbooks? So we'll provide
Okay.
whatever resources they need,
Hmm.
but really they're on their own. I have a
Well,
group
that's
that's
good. And
been
so
together.
this is how you would gather sort of this is a common thread, like, okay, handbooks are the issues, or the
Mhm.
next gen is the issue, or something along that. If you're getting
Yep.
requests, is that how you sort of develop your programming around, um, either direct requests or something that's coming from the peer groups?
Yes, we get them directly from the peer group. So we touch base with our moderators. Again, what kind of challenges are you having? What resources did you need? We also have an education committee that's made up of members. So I come from a family business,
Hmm.
which has a lot of interesting stories that I've lived through there that I use a
And let's
lot as
see, you got a
examples.
family business and you're working with family businesses, but
Yes.
not in your family business. That's a whole other podcast on its own,
Yes.
right? Because we
Yes.
want to figure out what happened, what could have been different. But I won't ask you those questions today. We're going to focus on your
Yes.
family business center, but I'm thinking that's another podcast.
Yes. That's a whole nother case story. Yes.
Those are
So
the best stories for me. I'm like, oh, because you can really learn from those. And like, well, here's what happened, and here's how you can avoid that. Like, I can't change what's been done in the past, but here's what we can certainly do moving forward for, other clients or,
yeah.
family businesses.
It's that peer-to-peer learning, that been there, done that learning. That's the best type of learning. I think one of the best events we had, and I'm going to get to the question in a minute, but I think one of the best events we had is we had a owner of a large company out of New York give a presentation on here are my top 10 failures that I've
Oh,
ever
yeah.
done. And it was just fascinating to hear. And then here's the lessons that I learned, and here's how I turned it around. And now I have this great, wonderful, large company that my 4 generations of family involved in. But we have an education committee that's made
Hmm.
up of members that says, again, this is what's keeping us up at night. This is what I need to know about. So it's not me saying, oh, this is what I think we should talk about. And it's not our sponsor saying, this is what I want to get in front of your members. It's the members saying, this is the programming that I need and the content that I need.
And do you roll that out to those peer groups, so those 22 groups, you say, by the way, here's some of the questions that have come in or some of the concerns. Here's a little information on that. Or do you really let
Mhm.
them come to you if they have questions or concerns?
So a little bit of both. So certainly if we see something trending that's an issue or a concern or a hot topic amongst other members or other peer groups, we'll do a monthly or an every other month kind of update like, hey, here's some topics and here's some TED Talks and here's some podcasts and
Mhm.
here's some maybe grab and go content that one of our faculty members put together on this topic that put it out to your group, read it, listen to it ahead of time, and then maybe it can be a future discussion in one of your meetings.
Now, because you are a part of the university, do you actually have courses that the families can take, or do you do seminars or, about specific topics, whether it be a new family or one that's in a certain component, like how to work on the business, not
Mm-hmm.
in it, or, understand the three circle model or those? Do you actually have, because every family is in a different position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you have
Yeah.
ongoing resources like that for your
So
families?
So we, again, through the center, will do different types of webinars, different types of workshops. We just ended a great 6-month workshop on preparing the next gen. So it was
Mm.
specifically for a few families. Again, we believe in that cohort learning style. So we had 10 families go through it, and it was really for the next gen that were ready to take over within an 18-month time period. So
Mm.
it was preparing that. As far as the university goes, we have an entrepreneurship major and minor. We have a one course that I teach that focuses on family business within that. It's a pretty popular course. I would say we get students from all over the university take that.
Hmm. And do you get families who come to you and say, "Hey, we're struggling or think we should sell, any advice, any ideas?" So do they really rely on you for, a whole host of issues that they're facing?
They do, and it's all types of issues. We get one that I've been getting a lot lately is ESOP. So I don't know how in Canada if you have a lot of companies that go ESOP up there. I think I can share my knowledge on that. I can share some experts I know that do really well with it, some different professional advisors. But again, I think the best thing I can do if someone comes and says, "Hey, I've got this question about going ESOP," I know what my accountants say, my lawyers, I read up on it, but I really need to talk to someone that's gone through it so I
Yeah.
can maybe ask, okay, if you did it, how did it impact your relationship with, your brother? Or, what did your employees do? Did they stay on? Did they sell? How did they handle that? So I can say, you know what, let me connect you with Ryan for coffee because he just went through a whole year-long process and it's
Mhm.
successful. And I think, again, of our 240 companies that are members, we know all of them. We know what some of the challenges are, what some of their successes have been, what their perspectives are on certain issues. So that's important to us. So then we can make those connections with our members.
Right. I think that's fascinating because I think what's so important with a family business center is to have that resource to be able to call and ask anything, to say we're
Mm-hmm.
struggling. Because I know that family businesses don't have those connections all the time, and
Yeah.
they think that they're alone. And once you realize that as a family business, you're not alone. It doesn't matter if you're a multi-billion-dollar company or you're a $1 million company. Your family issues are the same, and
Mm-hmm.
that communication, that how do you transition, that estate side. There's so many areas that come into play when you're a family business that you think you're alone, right? Can't talk to dad, can't talk to mom, can't talk to my kids, can't talk to anything. I think it's fascinating. And they're so fortunate that they have these centers. And in
Mm-hmm.
Canada, we have a couple of centers, and then we have a large body, kind of like your FEUSA, like your
Mm-hmm.
Family Enterprise USA. We have one that's Canadian, but it runs a little bit different. So are you integrated with Family Enterprise USA?
We are. Yes, we have worked with them for a few years. So, for those that don't know, it's a nonprofit organization that advocates for family businesses in Congress. One of their, if you're not familiar, one of their most impactful initiatives are they were behind the scenes helping them start a family business caucus. So
Mm,
they'll collaborate with policymakers to really ensure that family businesses' concerns are being heard, which I think it's a group that's can often be overlooked. And I've had the
absolutely.
yeah, I've had the privilege of being able to travel to DC a few times with the organization to share stories with policymakers from our region and highlight some of the challenges and the contributions of the family business community in our region. And I think the advocacy work that they do is so crucial,
Hmm.
and it really helps support family businesses across the country, and their efforts are helping our constituents stay connected and be part of the national conversation, which again, I think the family businesses, and some people will intersperse that with small business. I would argue that not all family businesses are small
No,
businesses.
no, no.
Um, yeah, but it really helps them to have a voice, and they're doing some great work in Washington.
Well, I think that regardless if it's, the US, Canada, or around the world, that family businesses are the backbone to the
Hmm.
economy, right? They produce
Absolutely.
a large amount of the GDP. We forget about them a lot. Yes, we think about the large companies like the Walmarts or things like
Mhm.
that are massive, but there's a lot of smaller companies that maybe have 60 or 100 employees, or maybe they have a couple of thousand that we really don't think about. And without them, because they could be the companies that maybe produce product for some of the larger companies. So there's a lot of little feeder companies that are family run. And we're not talking mom and pop
Mhm.
corner store. We're talking manufacturing.
Mhm.
We're talking all kinds of things. And I think sometimes that we forget about that we think of family
Mhm.
businesses small, but they're not necessarily small. And then when you think of a family business, you either think the large, like the Walmart family, like large companies,
Mhm.
but really they're the backbone of the economy. And without
Yeah.
them, and I think they're forgotten a lot, like you mentioned. It's nice to have someone advocating for
Yeah.
them.
Well, I think a great research or thesis project would be for a student to take a product like Jeep. So in Toledo, we make the Jeep in Toledo, and then go through and see how many family businesses go
Mm,
into that product, right? So we
yes,
have a lot of manufacturing in our area that makes a part for a part for a part that
yes,
goes into the Jeep, right?
yes,
And then if you
yes.
just like drill down and who's doing their payroll, who's doing their cleaning solution for it, who's making the
Yeah. Who
uniforms. I
makes
mean,
a little screw? Who does the, you know?
yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
One of our clients here in Canada produces, like you say, a part to a part to a part
Hmm.
for vehicles. So if you need a little bracket that holds something, or, think about your seatbelt bracket or something, like there's
Mhm.
all of these little pieces that have to be produced somewhere, and you
Mhm.
forget about that. And a
Mhm.
lot of those are family businesses.
Absolutely.
And again, they're so busy in the business that they don't get a chance to work on the business. And I think family business centers are a great resource for all family businesses, regardless of the
Mhm.
size, because you're still dealing with the same issue. Your mom is still your mom, your dad is still your dad, and the fact that you hate your brother is,
Yeah.
always going to be. Fortunately, I'm an only child, so I didn't have any of those dilemmas. But I'll tell you, my husband is one of 10, and there's a lot of different dynamics in there. So can you
Mhm.
imagine, first gen is it's somewhat easier if you're transitioning to you got two or three kids, but think about when that transitions to the second, third, fourth, and now you're dealing with 20, 30, 40 people. It becomes a
Mhm.
much bigger challenge. And where do you get the advice? But to go to somewhere like a family business center, say, hey, we're struggling with
Yeah.
this, Angie, where can you send us, or who do you know that can help us go down this path and not make it a big rabbit hole that we're down, that we're
Yeah.
stuck in and can never come out of.
Yeah. One of our members did an interview not too long ago, and he said the secret to being a successful family business, have one kid.
Oh
There
yeah,
you
yeah,
go.
it's true. It's true. It's an easier transition.
Mhm.
I'll tell you one quick story before we end. So again, we deal with several, different sizes of companies. But
Mhm.
one of these companies, a very small company. It's probably, I don't know, maybe $1 million of revenue. It's a very small family business, and there's four members,
Mhm.
right? Four. That's it. Mom, dad, two kids. So we did what part of our process is discovery to find out what's happening. We ask everybody basically the same question,
Yeah.
just in slightly different ways. If you're you actually own the company, or you're a child in the business or out of the business, but we're going to ask basically the same questions. And it's a family of four, right? We
Mhm.
had four completely different answers for every question we asked. We're like, okay, this is a little
Yeah.
business. We're not talking a very complicated business. And then, we get called in by one who's like a multi-billion dollar, and it's the same questions. It's the same situation. Maybe they're a little better at organizing, but pretty much it's like we really don't know what's happening. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter the size of the company. It's all about that communication. And I've lived it myself. I could be one. I was just thinking about that. The speaker who did the 10 mistakes. I think I could write one
Mhm.
on that for sure. And one of the mistakes, well, I didn't realize I made a mistake till I had my family on my podcast and was taken back by the fact that they thought everything was such a big surprise to them. I'm like, I'm sure I told you all that. Did we not discuss that? We're like, no. Oh, okay, great. Well, let's delete this and move on to a different topic. So, I mean, we think we communicate. So I think we talk a lot in our heads as founders and business owners. We're talking a lot about all these ideas, and I don't think we verbalize them a lot. So, it's interesting for us to talk to families and realize how far apart they are on their, projection or what they think is going to happen with the families,
Yep.
uh, or
That
whether
is
family business.
That's the first thing I say when I teach my class in the spring. Communicate, communicate, and then over communicate. Because if you
Absolutely.
look at the stories of failed family businesses, how many of them boil down to just lack of communication?
Absolutely. And
Too
I think
many.
the numbers, statistically, I mean, we're all look at the founders of the family businesses. Right now there's a bulk that are between the ages of 60 and 80, right? We're going to
Mhm.
transition. I think the numbers in the US are something like $75 trillion of assets are going to transition over the next,
Mhm.
7 to 10 years from family business. So that somehow is going
Yes.
to either be sold to a stranger, transition to the family, or to the employees, which we talked about briefly. There's only three ways to do it. Or the fourth, I guess, is you just let it die on the vine,
Mhm.
which is no way to end a family business or a legacy. But it's fascinating to think, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot going to happen over the next few years, and we better be prepared for all
Mhm.
those changes and start to talk about what you really want to happen with your family business and what you want your legacy to be, regardless of the size of your family business. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today and speaking with us about the University
Mhm.
of Toledo Family Business Center. And we're definitely going to have another podcast on your family
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. 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 We won't tell my mom about that one.
I don't
Um,
know. It's like
yeah.
we want to talk, but don't tell anybody in your family that you're on a
Yeah.
podcast.
No, but thank you, and thank you for all the good work that you and your company are doing. for family
Thank you.
businesses.
So tell me, how can people find you, Family Business Center? What is the web page, or how can they reach you or look at more information?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn. Angie Jones, our center is on LinkedIn. Like that's a great way. We have our assistant director does all of our marketing, and she's really great at putting a lot of different type of content out there. And then our website is utfamilybusiness.org.
Great. Well, we'll put that in the show notes. So again, thank you very much for joining us today, Angie.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find BlueRoots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.